To you by the personal injury attorneys of Perinick, Caulfield, Averill, and Noyes. This hour will be informative, along with taking your questions and comments. Now, here are your hosts for today's show.
Good evening. This is Attorney Matthew Noyes, and I am one of the attorneys at Perinick, Caulfield, Averill, and Noyes, the host of FLA Law on the radio every Tuesday from 5 until 6 each week. This is a live legal call-in talk show. We lawyers, we can talk forever, but it's even better if we can answer questions for you. But I'm not going to do this alone. I have my law partner here, Lori Robinson, as well, here to answer questions. Lori is a board-certified civil trial attorney. She's also a lawyer with us at Perinick, Caulfield, Averill, and Noyes. She is a native Clearwaterian.
Clearwaterian.
I don't know if that's what you call it.
Right.
But Lori is here to answer questions about Social Security disability. We're both here to answer questions about personal injury, car accidents, slip and falls, work accidents, and really just about any questions that you may have. If we can't answer your questions, we can at least lead you towards finding the answer that you need. So please, before I introduce Lori and have her talk, I want to at least give you the telephone numbers that we have. It's 727-441-3000.
And it's already lighting up. We already have one question calling in and it doesn't even start yet.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Yeah. So the number is 727-441-3000. So call us if you have questions. But let's take this first call.
Pauline from Clearwater, you're on the air.
Yes, thank you. I just came down here from Savannah because my daughter was in a bad accident. And my sister told me before we call any law firm that advertises or has billboards that some of them just try to negotiate and they won't go to trial. And they end up sending you over to someone like a firm like yours that will go to trial. Is that true? Because otherwise, why wouldn't I just start with y'all to begin with?
That's a very good question. We do see that a lot, quite honestly. We pride ourselves in going to trial if we need to go to trial. And there are some firms that don't like to go to jury trial or take it into litigation, and they may co-partner with other firms. We do like to take it from the beginning because we get to know the client, we get to know the case from day one all the way to the last day. And the trial process is not an easy process. It takes lots of preparation. So jumping in right at that time isn't the best thing to do, because Lori, you can explain really what we have to go through even before we think about filing the lawsuit.
Yeah, and actually one of the, thank you so much for calling. I know it's can be a little bit intimidating sometimes for people to call on the phone, and I appreciate that. Actually, one of the things that is important about being willing to go to trial, I'd say probably it's the most important thing, is that the insurance companies and the lawyers on the other side know that you will go to trial. Very few cases actually do have to go all the way to a jury trial. And actually, most times people are kind of relieved to hear that, because the process itself is a little bit intimidating for the average individual. I mean, a typical jury trial in an automobile case would probably take the better part of a week. And it's, you're going to be on the witness stand and, all this, but there's so much that leads up to that. And as I say, very few cases actually do go all the way through trial. But if you have lawyers that really, the insurance companies don't really take their cases to trial, then your opportunity to get your case settled is for a reasonable amount is very, very much compromised, because everything's measured against what a theoretical jury would do if the case did actually go all the way to a jury trial. But mostly, a lot of times we're able to get cases resolved without having to even file a lawsuit. And, that's the preferable situation for people. But again, it's based on the fact that the insurance companies know we're going to hold their feet to the fire if we have to.
Right. And we tell our clients that, we start preparing for trial the day you sign up with us, because it is gathering all the information. A lot of the information that you use at trial is the information that you gather in the few weeks after the crash. So it is so important to start the process of trial preparation, even though you may not go to trial during the first few weeks of after the accident, the first few weeks of representation.
Sure, we're always having to interview witnesses, so we'll send our investigator out to investigate the circumstances.
Taking photos of the property damage or the area and such like that. Does that answer your question?
Well, it sure does, and I appreciate your help, and I think I want to tell her to call you back.
Well,
thank you very much. Thank you for listening. We're here to help you.
All righty.
Thank you. That does free up a line. It's 727-441-3000. I would be amiss if I did a remiss if I didn't also tell you that we are on live Facebook on our firm's Facebook page at Pernick, Caulfield, Averill, and Noyes Injury Lawyers. So we are live. So if you don't want to call in and hear your voice on the radio, you'd rather just send us a question via Facebook, happy to do that. I'm looking at it right here on the screen right now.
And we also have the show available on YouTube on the firm's YouTube channel as well.
Matt stole the words right out of my mouth. Yes. And we also on the firm's YouTube. So just go to YouTube and turn into Pernick, Caulfield, Averill, and Noyes, and you'll find us and actually all the shows from each week. So we're here for you. We're here for the next 45 minutes to answer questions that you have. We are a personal injury law firm. We are the oldest personal injury law firm in Tampa Bay. Guy Pernick started our firm in 1955. He was an insurance adjuster and decided that he wanted to wear the white hat instead of the black hat.
Yes.
and he's the first one to specialize in just doing personal injury matters.
Which that's so important, actually, as it turns out, just like in medicine and pretty much all areas of professional life now, there's so much to know that it ends up becoming very important to be specialized in your area.
Exactly true. I mean, we know enough about landlord tenant or criminal law, just enough to know that we don't know enough and to send them to somebody who specializes in those areas. Oh my goodness,
yes. When somebody will come in and maybe needs a little help that is a friend or a friend of a friend. It's every single area of the law is pretty complex.
Right. And we've been doing this for so long that we know a lot of the attorneys in the area. In fact, Michelle Perez was one of our guests a few weeks ago.
Oh, yes. It was so nice to see her.
Yeah, who does immigration law. And so so we know that if there's an immigration question, to send it to somebody who knows how to do it.
Yes.
But if you have questions tonight, give us a call, 727-441-3000. Somebody asked me, hey, Matt, I know you do the radio show each week. How do you prepare for the radio show? and I told him, listen, it's just a great opportunity to tell them really what happens to us on a daily basis. And
sure.
And so like today, I had a perfect issue to talk about, and it was a recorded statement in a PIP case, or a personal injury protection case. What happens in personal injury protection is that if you're involved in a crash, your insurance company has to pay the first $10,000 worth of medical bills. That's only if you own a car. If you don't own a car, then you have to turn to a resident relative, that is somebody who lives with you, who owns a vehicle. So even if you're not in that relative's car, their insurance could pay for it. But then it goes one further. What if you don't have a resident relative? Well, then you go to the car that you were in at the time of the crash. And that's what was happening in our situation. We had a young girl who got in a serious car accident. Somebody pulled out in front of the car she was traveling in. She was a passenger in the car. And she got hit. She had to go by ambulance to the emergency room and have treatment for her mouth and also for her back. And she didn't own a car. And so they said, okay, what about who do you live with? And she referred to the person who she lives with as her mother because she raised her, but it really was her godmother. So it wasn't a resident relative. Mm-hmm. And so we had to take a recorded statement to show that wasn't the resident relative. It was just a very loved one. But that policy doesn't come into play. And so then we had to go to the car that she was in to get the PIP coverage.
And doesn't that just illustrate how important specialization is?
Exactly
it's
true.
It's like unbelievable the convoluted way that insurance policies work and the applicable law. But that's good. So hopefully the insurance company will do the right thing in this setting. But they always have to Of course, in that case, of course, they're probably trying to be sure they'd like to avoid paying.
Yeah,
right?
they were trying
That's
to
what insurance
get
companies-
some other insurance
Yeah,
company
right.
to pay instead of them. But I wasn't alone. Lori, you had a very busy day too.
Yes,
You had a deposition.
And actually, the fun part is that it was actually live and in person. I was at a court reporter's office in St. Pete.
That doesn't happen that often anymore.
And the particular defense lawyer, he likes to actually do the depositions live, and he was sharing this morning that the reason he does that is he felt like he got burned on a Zoom depo, which actually after COVID, almost all of the depositions now are done what we call virtually, through the Zoom or one of the other services. But he had a misimpression about the person he had deposed in this Zoom setting, and he went to trial and he got a big surprise. Well, since he's on the other side, it's like, okay, I'm not, but
we like those surprises.
but apparently the plaintiff didn't present too well in the Zoom setting, which is kind of a problem with that because people can. It feels so casual, so
Right.
they aren't putting out their best impression necessarily,
Right.
and that's what happened. And so he got surprised because after they went to trial, of course, the plaintiff's lawyer, which we would work with our clients so that they can present themselves very well in giving testimony. But this particular case, it was our client that was being deposed, and he had experienced a trip and fall in an area of a sidewalk in St. Petersburg. He did very well, but of course, I prepared him well the day before.
Yeah.
So,
But a deposition, they don't just talk about that
Right.
accident.
Oh, no. And this was one of the things. Our client was an older gentleman, quite interesting, very intelligent. He was an engineer by background. He was retired, but he was a little perturbed initially because, of course, they go through all your background, personal background, which most times in the long run isn't going to matter, but they have a right to discover about the plaintiff and
Right.
different things about them. And then, of course, any prior injuries you might have had is the main thing that they would be looking at. And then, of course, how the incident itself happened.
Right. And then the injuries and the medical
Right.
treatment.
Right.
And I mean, those depositions can last hours and hours.
Yeah, typically, there's certainly in most cases going to be the 1 to 2 hours. This was kind of a typical one. Every so often, I had one, maybe it was Monday, it's been a long week already, but that was fine. Yeah, it was Monday. But that lawyer took 3 solid hours.
Today's only Tuesday.
I know,
believe it or
right?
not, Lori.
It's like, it was a long deposition. It's like, oh, man.
Yeah, that's why Lori and I work as a team on all our cases together. She's far more patient than I. I could not sit for 3 hours in a deposition. So thank you, Lori, for being such a good team
Well,
player.
I'm happy to do it. I like it.
Yes, and it is good. And we like that client especially. I mean, he is engineering, and
Yeah.
your brother is.
Yes, my brother's an engineer, worked for Honeywell. This gentleman had also worked for Honeywell at some point. I don't think they really overlapped. But I know from growing up around an engineer, they're very precise.
And he wrote a paper on physics.
Yes.
And my brother is a physics
that's right.
teacher
Yeah, we were
over at
talking about
Jesuit
that.
High School. He, believe it or not, he was my chemistry and physics teacher over at Clearwater Central Catholic a long time ago. So
did you find differential equations simple to understand?
I didn't understand it then, and I don't understand it now. But no, so if you have questions about a deposition, what to expect in a deposition, or the process of litigation, which we're going to talk a little bit about, please give us a call at 727-441-3000. We are here for this hour. We're live, and we're here to answer any questions you have regarding the law. Now, Lori, we see in today's society, people think that you can have a case and it can be done in the TV 1 hour,
No.
and it just doesn't happen that way. A typical automobile accident case. Can you tell our listeners about how long,
Sure.
what the process is generally?
Yeah. So generally, now we'll see the law did change recently. It used to be that you had 4 years within which to bring a personal injury action. They've now recently changed that to 2. So for cases that have happened after March of this year, it will be somewhat more expedited in terms of when you would file a lawsuit. But the bottom line is the things that happen, that are required to happen, take quite a while. And so the first part of the process is the person has to treat. I mean, you don't really know what your situation is going to be until you've actually completed your medical treatment. Obviously, you hope that you can recover very well, but the point of a personal injury claim is to preserve your rights and obtain compensation for you based on what your situation is.
And that's one of the problems I had with the change of the statute of limitations from the 4 years to the 2 years. That if you have an automobile accident and you conservatively treat and try to avoid surgery, then you can't avoid surgery. You have to have surgery. You have to file that lawsuit before you're fully recovered.
Yes, and that will be because there are definitely situations where a person will obviously, I think probably most people would try to avoid surgery as long as they can. And, so what ends up happening in the normal case, we would advise a client that you're really looking at if you have to file a lawsuit. And that lawsuit is at best going to be filed maybe towards the end of the first year. We'd like that if we can do that. Sometimes it takes a little longer for everything to develop. But once you file the lawsuit, now you're in litigation. You're in court. And there's this whole process that involves the depositions, like of our client, but we take depositions of the defense witnesses too. And so all of that ends up playing out over a period that typically is probably going to be 18 months, maybe even longer than that. So you can see it's very frustrating to people because you have the sense, like you were saying earlier, like you watch TV, it's like, oh, they have this exciting case, it's all done, whatever happens in such a short period of time. But we also, we want to be very careful to be sure that all damages are accounted for. And that situation with the surgery is a big one. I know I had a case years ago where the client had a recommendation for surgery, but she didn't want to get it. And I'm going to guess that it was probably a couple of years after the accident. And we were doing a mediation, which once you're in a lawsuit, at some point the court requires you to go through a settlement conference, which we call a mediation. Good idea. Many cases can settle at that point. But I'll never forget her sitting in front of me with her husband and telling, and her husband saying, "Tell Lori how you drop things." And she's, "Oh, I'm just clumsy." And as we talked about it further, that was kind of a classic neurological sign of a neck herniation that was causing problems, and that was what was happening. So we had to not abandon the mediation, but basically what they call impasse it, because we needed to see whether maybe she better consider that surgery. And it turned out she needed to. Wow. And she had a very successful surgery, thank goodness. Yes. The value of her claim needed to include all of that. And it was a much more substantial claim and needed to be because of her need for surgery.
Right, and that's why you can't rush these cases.
No, you really can't.
You really can't. You got to make sure you only have one opportunity in front of a jury for all past and future damages. And so it's important that you have all of it all put together so you know exactly.
Yeah, how many times will somebody ask us about, well, what if something happens in the future?
Yeah.
When you settle your case, or if you have a jury trial, whatever the settlement of it is, that's it.
Yeah. So if you have any questions regarding the litigation process or jury trials, please give us a call, or also go to our Facebook, Parent Caulfield, Averill, Illinois Injury Lawyers Facebook page, and you can type in your question there. It does look like we do have a caller.
We do. It's Kelly from Clearwater.
All right. Hey, Kelly, thank you for calling.
Hi, how are you?
We're good, thank you.
I just have a question regarding workers' compensation.
Okay.
I'm on work comp right now and receiving work comp benefits because I can't work. Are those benefits taxable?
That's a very good question. It's a question that's asked a lot. Let me see if I can address that for you. If you get hurt on the job, workers' comp is required to provide you with what's called temporary total disability benefits or temporary partial disability benefits, TTD or TPD benefits. And the difference between that is a temporary total disability benefits means that the workers' comp authorized doctor says that you can't go back to work at all for that period of time because of the work injury. If that's the case, then you're entitled to 66 2/3 of your average weekly wage. And there's a way to calculate the average weekly wage, but we need probably 4 or 5 of these shows to fully explain all the ways to calculate the AWW, or the average weekly wage. But they have to pay you the 66 2/3. If you have limitations and restrictions that don't take you out of work altogether, but put you on restrictions or modifications that you can't earn 80% of your average weekly wage, then you may be entitled to temporary partial disability benefits. And there's a quacky formula for temporary partial disability benefits, but in essence, it's about 62% of your average weekly wage. So those are the two wage benefits that you're entitled to if you get hurt at work. And so then the question we hear often, am I going to get a W-2 for the work from workers' comp? And I'm going to get Lori to answer that question.
And so, although we are, quote, not tax attorneys, but there is a provision of the tax code that does apply to payments that really come from a personal injury, and workers' comp is in that same category. So to answer your question, no, you would not be responsible for paying income taxes on your indemnity, what they call indemnity benefits for workers' comp.
Yeah, so don't be waiting for a W-2 from workers' comp. We have to wait long enough for benefits from workers' comp. You don't have to wait for
it's
W-2.
like that would really be the add insult to injury, wouldn't it be? Because you get 66 and something percent, or 2/3% of your wages, so you're not getting a full amount really. So, and there's a limit to remember that there's a maximum depending on what your wages are. What's the limit this year?
It's about $1,200.
Yeah, and that would be depending on what the wages are and how that calculation comes out. But if a person makes more than that, that's...
We have nurses who make a lot more than that, and then they even take a bigger cut. But Kelly, does that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening, and we encourage you to keep listening every Tuesday from 5 until 6 o'clock. So thank you very much. That does free up one of the phone lines. The telephone number is 727-441-3000. But I think that's a good question. Talks about workers' comp benefits and is it taxable? We also hear questions because we do a lot of automobile accident cases. And yes, we are not tax attorneys, so we always refer out to a tax expert. But Lori, what about a recovery for your injuries and mental anguish if you get hurt in a car accident?
Yeah, same situation. If it is a result of a personal injury settlement, that would not be taxable.
Right. The only time I think it is taxable if there's punitive damages, and then it's a certain amount of punitive damages. But to get punitive damages in Florida is almost impossible
unusual,
to get them.
Certainly not applicable in the usual case.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So if you have any questions about that, please don't hesitate to give us a call. Again, 727-441-3000. We were talking about the litigation process, and we're talking about, you have to file the lawsuit, and then you have to get it served by the sheriff or a process server. Then they file an answer to the complaint. Then that's the discovery phase. We talked about the depositions, but there's more to the discovery phase than just depositions, right?
Sure. There's an awful lot of document production, basically. And there's also what's even before the deposition, typically on both sides, you send out what are called interrogatories, which is a legal word for questions.
I don't know why they just don't say questions.
And probably has some root in Latin or something, but and so those questions provide each side, typically they involve providing basic information about injuries, prior medical history, that sort of thing. And we also, on the defense side, will ask questions about witnesses and things of that nature. Once those interrogatories, which are provided and then the answers are given, then from there, actually that kind of provides sort of the groundwork for what kind of discovery investigation you're going to do.
Right.
And so then, you may also, obviously with medical records, the defense is always wanting to see every medical record that our clients have ever had generated in connection with their themselves.
Not just that accident, any prior accidents, or even just their general doctor.
Yes.
How do they get those records?
So those records are obtained basically by what we call a non-party subpoena, and so that means they have the right to subpoena records, and basically that's how they'll go about it. There's a process that they notify the attorney, us, and we have an opportunity to agree or not agree. But in the usual situation, what happens is they subpoena the records from the various medical facilities. Those records are produced to the defense lawyer. We ask for we file a request for copies. They have to provide us copies. And that's a part of the normal process. It is kind of invasive for people. I think that, they feel like that. It's like, wait a minute, am I on trial or something? And you're not really. I mean, but the defense does have a right to investigate the case and investigate the damages that we're presenting. And obviously, they're going to be medical. So if there's been previous medical, then that's something they have a right to look at.
Well, they also get to look at your employment. They can subpoena your employment. They can subpoena the employment, the school records, and such like that.
Right, and that a lot of times that will happen.
Work injuries.
Yes, and especially when you've got a situation where you've unfortunately actually lost income and been out of your job for a period of time. So in that scenario, you're going to be asked to produce tax returns. They're going to subpoena records from the employer to basically determine to what extent we're going to be able to show the actual amount of the loss of income.
So we gather all those records. They gather all those records, and we get copies of them.
I mean, a lot of times we will gather stuff in advance because we know this is coming,
And then they do the depositions, and then they have the mediation. And if you can't settle at mediation, the next step is to
get it set for trial.
Set it for trial. Yeah. And you set it for trial, poof, you get the trial date just like that?
No, and it's even worse now because of the backlog that developed with COVID. But it always was something like you're going to set it for trial and it's going to be a year down the road type thing, and so typically, like if we were to be getting cases scheduled now, which we are, what you're going to find is they're going to be scheduled next year sometime,
So typically a case, it takes from the time that you file the lawsuit to a jury trial, if it gets that far, it's typically about 2.5 years.
Yes, and what ends up happening, as you and I have experienced before, is even when you get the case set for trial and say it's one of those few cases that it ends up making sense for it to go all the way to a jury trial, you're never going to a jury trial that you don't ultimately feel like that's in your best interest. You're doing that, you go to trial, and what ends up happening is maybe your case doesn't get called because we're not the only cases that are on the docket. And so it's not uncommon to not get reached in that first trial setting and have your case continued to a later setting.
Right. Well, it looks like it's a good time to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about a very special holiday next Tuesday, the 4th of July, and how to be safe. But if you have questions, call us at 727-441-3000. I am Matthew Noyce, and she is Lori Robinson, and we are here for the next half hour to answer your questions. We'll be right back.
This is the TAN Talk Radio Network.
In 1955, the law firm now known as Pernick, Caulfield, Averill, and Noyes made a decision. Instead of taking whatever cases came through their doors, they decided to focus specifically on personal injury. 64 years later, the law firm is one of Clearwater's longest-running personal injury firms. Available 24 hours a day with offices in Clearwater and throughout Tampa Bay, they're ready to put decades of experience to work for you if you or a loved one has been injured in a car accident or injured due to someone's negligence or recklessness. If you feel overwhelmed, uncertain, or unsure about your next steps after being involved in an accident or after a loved one sustained serious injuries due to someone else's negligence, call Pernick, Caulfield, Averill, and Noyes at 727-796-8282 or online at usalaw.com. That's 727-796-8282 or online at usalaw.com. Non-attorney spokesman.
This is the TAN Talk Radio Network.
Thank you for coming back. This is Attorney Matthew Noyce, and my law partner and guest for tonight's show on FLA Law on the radio is Lori Robinson. We are here for the next half hour to answer any questions that you may have regarding personal injury, slip and falls, car accidents, workers' compensation, Social Security, disability, and gosh, any other legal thing that you may have. So we are here live on the radio, so call us. We are also on Facebook live, Pernick, Caulfield, Averill, Noyce Injury Lawyers. You could just type in your question there if you wish. It does look like we have a few viewers on that right now. And we are also on our page, our YouTube page. So I don't think we can ask questions on the YouTube page, but we are here for you. So again, if you have questions, the number is 727-441-3000. We call it FLA Law on the radio because we used to do a TV show called FLA Law. And that TV show was, we did it 4 nights a week throughout Tampa Bay. And what always seemed to happen on FLA Law TV was that all the callers came in like in the last 10 minutes. Yeah. And so we were never able to get to all the callers. And so what I do is I encourage you now that if you have a question, don't hesitate. Give us a call now at 727-441-3000. Next week, we are celebrating a very special holiday, the 4th of July. And although we typically do our show on Tuesdays from 5 until 6, next week we'll be running a replay so that we can enjoy America's birthday with our friends and with our family. But since we're talking about that, I think it's important we talk about safety in the 4th of July.
And how people tend to celebrate the 4th of July.
Yeah. Now, it's a little bit different now because I think it's a Tuesday, which is a little different. But I still think that it's still too many chances of getting hurt. And in fact, there was a study in the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, and it was in 2021. 9 people died from firework accidents, and 11,500 were injured due to fireworks situations. And the study goes on to say that of the 9 people that died, 6 of them were from fireworks misuse. 1 death was associated with a mortar launch malfunction.
That doesn't sound good.
No, that doesn't. And 2 were of unknown circumstances, which concerns me as well. Now, the 11,500 emergency room treated injuries actually is down from 2020.
Was it in 2020?
Down from the spike of 15,600 in 2020. Why do you think that was?
People had a lot of time on their hands and they were at home.
They weren't setting off the neighborhood fireworks because of COVID.
So I see what you're saying. I was hearing it the reverse way. Okay,
2020, there was 15,600 injuries. And we have last year, 2021 was 11,500. So more people were lighting fireworks at home in 2020. Resulting in more people getting hurt.
I see what you're saying. Right. Because, of course, you know how much we love going out to see the Threshers and watch the fireworks there. Didn't have that option.
Yeah. A little plug for the Threshers.
Yes.
The most amazing fireworks show.
Oh, my goodness.
Not just on the 4th of July, but any fireworks show is just amazing.
Very worth seeing. It's great.
Our firm does a client appreciation baseball game every year. And we're at the Threshers. We invite our clients, and I think we invite like 5,000 of our clients to come. And a lot of them come with their friends and with their family. And we always make sure that there's a fireworks show at the end of the game.
Yeah, it's a very nice time.
Yeah. So but out of the 11,500 firework injuries throughout 2021, the study showed that 8,500 of them were right between June 18th and July 18th. So
I wonder what that was about.
I know. The statistics also say that young adults, 20 to 24, had the highest rate of emergency visits. I thought maybe it would be children under that, but no, it's the adults 20 to 24. And I guess we can imagine what the part of the body most injured by fireworks were the
hands
and the fingers.
Ooh.
That was 31% of the injuries, and head and face were like 21%.
Wow. No.
So there is a chance for injury,
Absolutely.
a horrible chance of
Absolutely.
injury, but there are also steps to prevent these injuries from happening. And Lori, can you tell our listeners,
Sure.
some are common sense, but a lot of times we forget common sense when we're out celebrating.
Yeah, I think I was telling you off the air that a friend circulated a video to me, and it was people out in their driveway shooting off fireworks, and they were shooting them all over the place. And then one, hit something and started burning, and then all of a sudden it hit the car, and they had like a conflagration. So we always think, oh, it's never going to be me, but you really want to be very careful. Obviously, you want to read instructions, know what you're doing, and then sort of common sense things, which is you need to be very aware of the environment. And so that's going to include obviously not allowing young children to be playing with anything or getting anywhere near where you are when you are shooting the fireworks off, because you might have a mortar malfunction and you don't want a child around there. And then some other things that are kind of, sort of fire safety is keeping a bucket of water or garden hose handy in case there was a fire. You're going to light the fireworks one at a time. I noticed that in this video that I saw, they were just lighting one after another. And I think it just kind of got out of hand because in the excitement, I'm sure, basically. You really don't want, if there's any indication that it's malfunctioning, you're not going to use it. You're not going to try to relight something. That kind of reminds me of, firearm safety. I mean, you need to be careful about what you're doing because these are dangerous, basically, Obviously, do not place any part of your body directly over it.
Well, when you're leaning over to light it, I see that too many times in videos. It's like, what if it goes off? It's going right through your chest.
Right. And so you just to better be safe than sorry. And I guess part of what it is, you want to be sure everything is really out so that you don't end up with a fire starting somewhere.
Right.
You don't just, and then as lawyers, we've got to say, obviously be sure you know what the legal requirements are in your particular location.
Sure. Sparklers is another thing. People think, they're just sparklers. But those sparklers get to be 2,000 degrees. Yeah. And, you got to be careful. Don't point them at people and stick those in water. I found that out.
Yeah.
You got to stick those in water when you're done because they're still piping hot.
Right. And I would say be very, especially where we've had some rain lately, but when it's been kind of dry and the ground is dry, you got to be careful.
I have a sparkler story. I have 10 brothers and sisters, and we grew up in Naperville, Illinois. And so I don't remember how young I was, but I was pretty young. But there was one, I assume it was the 4th of July, but we decided to light sparklers. Dad decided to light sparklers, and we would run out the back door and see how fast you can get to around the house before the sparkler would run out.
Yeah.
And so I think we lit 3 or 4, and the 3 or 4 of us ran around. And when we came back, the curtains in the kitchen were on fire.
Oh, no.
Because the sparklers were being lit inside.
Oh, no.
And so fortunately, it was just the curtains.
Right,
but that's the dangers that it could be. Now, us 8-year-olds thought that was really cool.
Yes, right.
But Mom and Dad probably didn't think that was too cool. And I think that was the last time we had sparkler races.
I imagine so. I'm sure your mother put her foot down.
Yes. Well, if you have questions about fireworks safety, please give us a call. But otherwise, it looks like we do have a caller on the line.
Yes, we do. We got Sally from Dunedin. I don't know if this is fireworks related or not, but we'll see what she's got. Sally, you there?
We always have fireworks going on in the show.
Not
Sally.
A fireworks question, but probably a more common question. I have a question. Say I'm in a car accident and it's the other driver's fault and they don't have insurance. How does that work and who pays for damages?
That's a very good question. And unfortunately, it's a question that we have to answer almost on a regular basis because our main practice is car accidents.
Right.
So, Sally, thank you for calling. Lori, can you help Sally out?
And I want to say that Sally was exactly correct when she said this is probably a more common one, even than the fireworks one. So there are a lot of different potential areas for recovery. But if the other car doesn't have insurance that caused the accident, then you're really going to be looking at the insurance available to you on your car or a car you have insurance on. And so you're always going to be able, as we've talked before, if you have, you'll always have the personal injury protection insurance, and that's for medical bills, 80% up to $10,000. And that is personal coverage. Now, let's assume, so your medical is being covered through that, but what if you end up with medical that goes beyond that? And what if you end up with an injury that unfortunately there's some residual permanency, you continue to have some issues of pain even after you've completed your treatment? Well, if the driver behind you had insurance, you would have been able to make a claim against their liability insurance. If they don't, then if you have what's referred to as uninsured motorist coverage on your own insurance policy, then you would be able to make a recovery just as you would have if the other driver had coverage. And we always talk about how important that uninsured motorist coverage is, because it is not at all uncommon for drivers in Florida to not have much liability coverage and sometimes to not have any. The only actual requirement under the law is to have the basic insurance, which works out to be that personal injury protection for the medical care for the individual person, and property damage of the $10,000. So you're in a situation where they are not required to have liability insurance unless they get into an accident, and then even then, so then they have to have 10,000 or something. So it's very, very helpful to have the uninsured motorist part. It's something people don't think about. Typically is not that much more expensive.
Right. It's the most important insurance to have. It protects you.
Highly recommended.
It protects you and your family for people that don't have liability
And
insurance.
it can be a situation, say you have somebody in your vehicle and they were seriously hurt and there's no insurance to cover. Well, your uninsured motorist can cover that individual too. And it's not like, it's just important because automobile accidents can obviously result in pretty serious injuries. And so this is a protection, basically.
It is the most important insurance to have. And Sally, thank you for calling and thank you for listening. We appreciate our listeners and we appreciate our callers as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is the most important coverage to have. And as we always say at Parent at Caulfield, Averill, Illinois, we're always happy to review your car insurance policy to make sure that you have adequate coverage. It wouldn't be this telephone number you would call, but you would call us at our office number at 727-796-8282. And we're always happy to review your policy with you to make sure you're getting the best protection for you and your family as possible. It's good to be proactive instead of reactive in those regards. So we're talking about fireworks and injuries that could happen. What if you're the homeowner and an accident happens? You invite your neighborhood over.
Yes.
And you're lighting fireworks off in your driveway and somebody gets hurt.
Right.
Is the homeowner responsible?
Absolutely could be. So you can imagine a situation where somebody is actually not being very prudent in how they're handling things. You're the owner. You are not saying a word, and then someone ends up seriously injured. So in that situation, the homeowner may face a claim against themselves for liability. And in that scenario, hopefully you have homeowners insurance that will protect you. And in most instances, you should have typical policies are going to have $100,000 to $300,000 in liability coverage. You can have additional, and depending, you always should look at your own financial situation really as to what you need to protect, because you can also add an umbrella policy that may provide even more coverage. But you certainly want some homeowners insurance coverage in that scenario, because
you could be held responsible for the negligence of whatever happened to cause those injuries.
Because it ends up being, if somebody gets hurt enough to warrant pursuing a claim, then they're going to go to some lawyer who's going to be looking for the arguments that you could have handled things better, that you didn't act reasonably, and so
didn't have those safety tips that you talked about, the bucket of water and such like that. But a lot of homeowners policies also have medical payment coverage.
Yes.
So if somebody on your property gets hurt and they have medical bills, that medical payment coverage would pay those medical bills without necessarily having to file a claim against their homeowner's policy for liability.
Hopefully, in the normal situation, we're hoping that there isn't going to be significant injuries, and so it's not our purpose to scare people, but and so that medical payments coverage, if there was something that occurred, would be something that could be handled. Of course, we've talked in earlier shows about dog bites and other situations that can happen where you can find yourself being allegedly legally responsible for somebody's injury. So it is good to be well insured, so you don't have to worry about those things.
And again, it's being proactive, knowing what could happen and taking steps to prevent it from happening, and then being protected should and it's an accident. I mean, car accidents occur. It's an accident. No one's done it on purpose, but people get hurt in accidents, whether it's a car accident or a firework accident. If the homeowner's responsible, then that's where the claim could be made. The problem is a lot of people that have that live in apartments and such like that, they probably don't have renter's insurance that would provide that kind of coverage. And I don't know if the apartment complex itself would be held responsible if they're blowing off fireworks in an apartment complex.
It would depend on the situation. And that's a part of, what happens. Everything depends on the particular situation, because the law of negligence is looking at, did the person act as a reasonable person should act?
Right.
And that could be, you could have a whole bunch of people maybe drinking and kind of being chaotic. Is there some obligation to monitor that better? Could be,
Right. Yeah. And so those are the things, I mean, when you're a lawyer, you kind of think of those things.
I always think we're the perfect risk managers, because we see, what happens if something has gone awry. So I'm always thinking about that in my own context, in my home, and I
do that at Walmart, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I'll go to Walmart or Target, and it drives my son crazy a little bit, because I'll say, hey, Jake, that's a risk. They should fix this. Oh, look at this pointy thing right at eye level. They should fix that, and so I think if we weren't lawyers, I mean, we're trained to be risk managers to minimize those risks.
Right.
So,
right. And unfortunately, we see a lot of what can happen if more care isn't taken.
Right. But we love being lawyers. We love helping people.
Absolutely.
So that is what we like to do. And not only on Tuesdays from 5 until 6 o'clock, but every day of the week. Our law firm is Pernick, Caulfield, Averill, and Noyce. Our main office is in Clearwater, but we have offices in St. Petersburg as well, as well as offices throughout the Tampa Bay area. Lori, if they wanted to reach us at our office, how would they do that?
Well, you can call our main number, 727-796-8282. You can also go on the website, which is usalaw.com or voiceoftheinjured.com. And there would be, there's a place to click and contact us, which is another way as well.
And I think there's Facebook as well, the Pernick, Caulfield, Averill, and Noyce Injury Lawyers Facebook. And Jacqueline would yell at me if I didn't talk about TikTok and Instagram, but I don't know those.
She's the younger one of us.
So
she's
Jacqueline
up with all
is
that,
the wise one in that. And so she'll be here in a few weeks to talk about that as well. But we are here for you. I mean, part of the problem, one of the complaints that we see a lot from the Florida bar from lawyers is that lawyers don't return clients' calls, or they can't get in touch with the client. And so that's why I think it's always important that we're available to talk to the clients. And Lori and I have a policy that we're always happy to schedule a phone conference to talk to clients, even if it's a 5-minute phone conference if necessary.
Yeah, I've always felt it was important as a part of my role to help the person understand the process and what they're going through. So, it's very difficult for people, and it's easy to get frustrated. And I'm not sure I can eliminate frustration, but at least I can provide information and answer questions.
Well, we had a great Google review from one of your Social Security disability clients, and really what he said was, I didn't know what to ask, and I didn't know what to expect. And I didn't have to ask the questions because Lori and Allison and Matt were able to answer the questions for me. And he could focus on his life instead of focusing on his claim.
We are certainly, and I'm going to use the word blessed, to have wonderful legal assistants that work with us. And Allison, that handles many of our Social Security cases, is just phenomenal. She does a great job. She's so caring and knowledgeable. And willing to give the listening ear to try to help people through the process.
Yeah, I blew up that Google review
Yeah.
and I stuck it on Alice's door, so everybody has to see how wonderful. We already know she is,
Yes,
but
that's
but
great.
it is good to see that. And so, if you want to read our reviews, just go onto our website and they're there. They're not all 5s. Anybody that has all 5s would be a problem. I think that they would be manufactured, but we are there to help as many people as we can. Next week, as we kind of talked about, we will not be here because we will be celebrating America's birthday with our friends and family, but we will be running a pre-recorded show. I think it's going to be the one with me and Brian Caulfield
that'll be a good one.
from a few weeks ago. But then the next week, I will be here. I'll be here on Tuesday, and I have a very special guest. Because we are been involved in Clearwater for so long, it's important to also give back to Clearwater.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have my friend Sean Clancy being a guest. Sean Clancy is a baseball fanatic, but that's not what he's coming for. He had the best bar in New York City about baseball, but that's not what he's coming for.
And
Sounds pretty good, though.
and this is how you know it's a good day. The phone lines are still blowing up. We got Terry from Homestead calling in.
All right, I'll take Terry in just a second. But Sean is going to be here to address his new role as being part of the homeless enrichment program, HEP, where they help people in our neighborhood. So he's going to be able to talk about HEP and what they do for the community.
That should be very interesting.
So that's 2 weeks from now. But let's take this call. Terry, I think, right?
Hi, it's can you hear me, sir?
Yes, Terry. Thank you for calling. How can we help you?
Thank you for taking my call, sir.
Sure.
It's good to be back. I'm a tech head.
Hey, tech heads are good.
Yeah, thank you. Some people don't respect us in this day and age, but I was looking for some legal advice from you if possible.
Okay.
Well, I wanted to know how I could make a formal legal complaint against a show who has the loudest buzz I've ever heard on their Facebook Live. Guys, we got to fix this. We got to get the hum down. I'm in all seriousness, though, as someone who's a tech lover like me, this is disastrous, and it's upsetting and objectionable and offensive as well to somebody like me to have this type of feedback, a buzz sound coming through. I think we need to get that sorted out.
Well, thank you for letting us know about it.
We will.
Because we're not
see
tech
what we
heads.
can do about that.
Well, I can tell that you're no disrespect. I can tell you're not tech heads.
Right.
I can tell you're not tech heads. Tech heads it's kind of a younger man's game.
Yeah, just a bit, yes.
Yeah, and I had my birthday yesterday, so I can't say I'm a young man anymore. So
I just saw a fly flying around on the camera too. That's kind of funny. It flew right in front of the camera and it was all biz buzz. Maybe it's the fly that's making the buzz.
That's what I would say. Well, Terry, thank you for listening. Thank you for listening, and thank you for calling. We appreciate it. Thank you for listening, and thank you for calling. So that is going to wrap up our show for this week. Again, if you have questions outside of Tuesday between 5 to 6 o'clock, please, we are here to answer your questions. We are the law firm of Pernick, Caulfield, Averill, and Noyce. We have been helping people after car accidents, slip and falls, and any negligence claims, workers' compensation, Social Security, disability since 1955. Give us a call at 727-796-8282 or visit us at usalaw.com. But in the meantime, drive safely and watch out for those who don't. Good night.
Good night.